Look closely at the girl washing her hair. Dark greenish water runs down her back. Everyone around her is stunned. They've never seen anyone's hair bleed black dye like that. She turns her head, eyes sharp enough to kill the gossiping crowd. This is Polaris, daughter of Magneto. She inherited her father's gift, the power to control all metal. Just a day earlier, police stormed the mutant's secret hideout. While helping her boyfriend escape, Polaris was captured, a glowing green collar locked around her neck. Thrown into solitary for the first time, she was still defiant. She stretched out her hand to crush the steel door, but the collar flashed red. Pain surged through her body, sending her convulsing to the ground. Outside, guards laughed at her helplessness. Confused, Polaris wondered if her powers had failed. From across the hallway, another inmate explained. "This is a flea collar. It's designed specifically for mutants, to keep us from doing anything dangerous." Only then did Polaris realize her sudden weakness came from this cursed device. After calming down, she started planning her escape. She couldn't stay locked up forever, especially since she was pregnant. The next day, on the way to the showers, a scar-faced black inmate spat at her. He was the prison's gang boss, swaggering with power. That scar was left by another mutant. Polaris glared back. If not for the collar, he'd already be pinned to the wall by steel pipes. Later in the cafeteria, she approached a white mutant, hoping for solidarity. Instead, he averted his eyes and muttered coldly, "Stay away from me." Clearly, he'd been cowed by the gang leader. With no allies, Polaris knew she'd have to face him alone. Out in the yard, the gang boss harassed her again, demanding she wash his clothes and massage his feet. When she refused, he sneered. "Trust me, you don't want to cross me. Out there, you've got powers. In here, I've got the power." Polaris ignored him and walked away, until his men tackled her, punching her face. With blood dripping from her nose, the boss grew smug. Hearing she was pregnant, he cruelly kicked her in the stomach. That was the last straw. Furious, Polaris unleashed her rage. Despite the collar's agony, she forced her powers to lift a steel table and slammed the gang boss into the fence. His men retaliated, punching her across the face, but guards quickly broke it up. Polaris was thrown into solitary confinement. As the door slammed shut, she despaired. How could she ever escape with this cursed collar? Meanwhile, the mutant underground was planning her rescue, but on the way, they were ambushed. Reed, one of their members, was captured, while Blink, the portal-creating mutant, was gravely injured and fell unconscious. In her coma, Blink's powers spiraled out of control, portals ripping into each other and threatening to destroy their hideout. Luckily, Reed's wife injected her with a special serum, allowing Blink to stabilize her powers just in time. Now the mutants had bigger problems, rebuilding their base and rescuing Polaris and Reed. Back in prison, Polaris stood before the steel door, hands glowing green, collar flaring red. She clenched her teeth and pushed to her limits. With a loud crash, the door burst open, but she collapsed, nose bleeding profusely. As Magneto's daughter, she was the nemesis of steel itself, but with the collar suppressing her, using her powers meant unbearable pain, perhaps even death. She crawled out, leaning against the wall, but guards spotted her instantly. Clearly, brute force alone wouldn't set her free. Meanwhile, the underground kept searching for ways to save both Polaris and Reed. Ironically, Reed wasn't even a mutant. In fact, he once specialized in hunting them, until one day, he discovered that both his children carried mutant powers. From that point on, Reed moved into the mutant underground safe house. His wife, Caitlin, grew increasingly worried about his safety. Taking their son and daughter, she secretly left the hideout to seek help from her younger brother, a government official. She hoped his influence could free Reed. But her brother, afraid of being implicated, refused outright. As the siblings argued, a mob of neighbors armed with weapons stormed toward the house. Fueled by hatred for mutants, they intended to wipe them out once and for all. Thankfully, Eclipse and Thunderbird arrived just in time. Using their powers, they scared off the neighbors and rushed Caitlin and her kids into a car. Yet the mob wouldn't give up so easily. Back at the base, Blink received the distress call. Standing firmly in the middle of the road, purple light flashed in her palms as she summoned a massive portal. Thunderbird floored the gas pedal, driving straight through it, delivering everyone to safety. From then on, Caitlin realized she could never act alone again. Only by working together could they save their loved ones. Meanwhile, Polaris was transferred to an even more secure solitary cell. There, she ran into a familiar face, Reed. Once, he had hunted her relentlessly. Now, fate had them sharing the same cage. Not long after, guards prepared to transfer both Polaris and Reed. They even built a special transport truck, sealed in plastic to nullify her powers. But the FBI overlooked one critical detail. Polaris had friends waiting. Eclipse had already set up an ambush. As the truck rolled in, Andy tried to blow out the tires, but his powers suddenly failed, his hands trembling. At the crucial moment, his sister Lauren stood atop a building. Boom, a tire burst, forcing the truck to stop. The FBI swarmed the scene. Traitor, the mutant who could turn invisible, crept toward the truck, but a few steps in, his power vanished. He was exposed and shot down. One by one, the mutants lost their abilities. Thunderbird spotted the cause, a man with glowing golden eyes scanning the area. It was Gus, his former comrade thought to be killed by the FBI. Not only was he alive, but now he was betraying his own kind. With powers disabled, Eclipse snarled, "If abilities couldn't win this fight, bullets would." A tense gunfight erupted. In the chaos, Thunderbird slipped close and knocked the golden-eyed man unconscious. In an instant, everyone's powers returned. Inside the truck, Polaris heard the gunfire and knew her team was outside. She tricked the guard into removing her collar, then she and Reed overpowered him. Unfortunately, there was no metal inside the truck for her to use. That's when Reed spoke up.
My leg. The metal screw in my leg. Take it. Take it.
Hesitating only a moment, Polaris summoned green energy and ripped the screws from Reed's leg, using them to slice through their restraints. Finally free, she wasted no time. When the guard reached for backup, she drove a screw through his throat. Crash! The truck door burst open. The FBI opened fire, but without the collar, Polaris was unstoppable. With a flick of her hand, bullets reversed course. With a fierce pull, every FBI weapon was ripped away. Weaponless, they were helpless. Right then, Caitlin pulled up in a car, scooping everyone up before speeding off, but such a bold prison break meant the mutant situation had just grown more dangerous. Police cars closed in, drones locked onto their position. Polaris and Eclipse were cornered. Eclipse urged her to take down the drones, but no matter how hard she tried, they were out of reach. Thinking quickly, she tore off the rearview mirror and hurled it out the window. Channeling her power, she adjusted the mirror's reflection directly at the drone. Eclipse instantly understood, pouring his energy into the mirror. The beam reflected back, striking the drone. A deafening explosion echoed behind them. The drone crashed, and the two shared a victorious smile before racing onward to freedom. But their relief didn't last long. Turner, the FBI agent, showed up with a squad blocking their path. With no choice, Polaris stepped out to confront them. She didn't flinch at the bullets. With a flick of her hand, the round spun harmlessly away. Another gesture, and Turner's gun flew straight into her grasp. The tables had turned. He hadn't captured her. Instead, he was staring down the barrel of his own weapon. Polaris and Eclipse dragged him into an abandoned house, a thick steel bar wrapped around his neck with just a wave of her hand. "You liked choking others, didn't you? Now feel what it's like to be the one choking." Turner was utterly powerless, left at her mercy. Fearing she might go too far, Eclipse urged his girlfriend to calm down, but Polaris wasn't out of control. She only wanted answers about Gus. Gus was the bane of mutants. With a flash of golden light in his eyes, he could shut down anyone's powers, and now he was working for the FBI. Clearly, something deeper was going on. But Turner refused to speak. His hatred for mutants ran too deep. 4 years ago, mutants had flaunted their powers in a clash with the FBI. Amid the chaos, Turner's daughter was killed. Since then, his grudge had consumed him. Seeing he wouldn't budge, Polaris called in Dreamer, the mutant who could peer into memories. She exhaled a stream of violet mist, pulling Turner's memories into view.
"Out of the car with your hands up!" Lorna!
At that moment, the FBI surrounded the house. To buy time, Polaris spread her arms wide. Steel bars ripped through the windows, impaling police cars outside. The sight alone forced the agents to retreat. One hit from those massive rods could mean instant death. Unable to break in, they switched tactics, firing volleys of tear gas. The house filled with choking smoke. As agents slipped inside, Eclipse realized they had no choice but to flee. He dragged Polaris out to safety. Back at the base, Dreamer shared what she saw. Turner wasn't close to Gus. The memories were faint, just some documents, a strange symbol, and a vague building. Thunderbird recognized the symbol immediately. It was Gus's tattoo. Reed recalled more. The building was a federal facility. Mutants had been transferred there before and never seen again. Tension rose. The group realized those mutants were likely shipped off to government labs as test subjects. Finding the truth behind that building became their top priority. Soon after, Andy approached a plain white wall, confidence in his eyes. He pressed his palms forward. Cracked spider webbed across the surface. With one final shove, the entire wall collapsed, leaving a massive hole. His powers were like a wrecking crew on demand. To uncover the secret, Eclipse took charge, bringing Reed and Andy along. Driving a plain truck, they thought they'd blend in, but on the way, the FBI pulled them over, demanding to check the cargo. The driver reluctantly opened the back. Eclipse instantly cast an illusion. The agents peered in, saw nothing unusual, and waved them through. Soon, they reached the federal building. Guards were everywhere. Breaking in seemed impossible, until Eclipse found a structural map. The facility shared a wall with the parking garage next door. Time for Andy's demolition skills. With his help, Eclipse and Reed slipped inside to search for files, while Andy returned to prep the getaway. They found the records, but as Eclipse tried to lock the door with his powers, the mechanism melted away. Seconds later, alarms blared throughout the building. FBI agents were already on their way to the archive room. After securing the hard drive, Eclipse set the rest of the files ablaze. This time, the FBI wouldn't let them slip away. Agents blocked every road, determined to catch them. Thankfully, Thunderbird spotted the danger from the base. Worse still, the only road the truck could take was already sealed off. That's when Polaris, powerful and fearless, stepped in. With 2 mutants at her side, she ordered Eclipse. No matter what's in front of you, don't brake, just drive straight through. Eclipse trusted her completely. The driver, however, was terrified. Ahead lay a steel barricade. Driving straight into it seemed like suicide, but with no other choice, he slammed the gas pedal down. The FBI opened fire. Bullets rained down. The driver froze in terror, until, suddenly, every round bent away, diverted by Polaris's power. Then Lauren raised her hand, manifesting an invisible bridge over the road spikes. The truck soared over the blockade and police below. When it landed, the driver burst out laughing. Never in his life had he felt such a thrill. But the chase wasn't over. Police cars bore down from behind. Beside Polaris, Wes conjured an illusion, splitting the truck into 2. The cops divided, chasing after both. Lauren panicked. What if they catch the real one? Wes smirked. Real one? Both are fake. The truck had never split at all. It was all Wes's trick. The team escaped, while Turner fumed with rage.
They stole vital, classified information, and we are going to hunt them down. I want surveillance on all cell phones within a 50-mile radius of the roadblock site. Monitor target names, keywords, repeated phrases, anything that sounds like coded communication.
Meanwhile, late at night, Eclipse received a call from his ex. With Polaris asleep beside him, he whispered quietly. On the other end, the woman was arrogant, ordering him to show up the next day. Eclipse agreed without hesitation. He wasn't betraying Polaris. The intel about the prison convoy, their only chance to free Polaris, had come from this woman. To repay her, he had to help, but there was no way he could let his hot-tempered girlfriend find out. Yet Polaris noticed right away. Her glare was deadly. Furious, she called Dreamer to confront Eclipse's ex. The woman was none other than Carmen Guerra, the region's notorious drug queenpin. Rich, powerful, her guards carried AKs. Seeing a green-haired woman arrive, the guards grew wary, but Polaris immobilized them with a flick of her hand.
Oh, I'm looking for Marcos Diaz and Carmen Guerra. Where'd they go?
I got no idea!
Well, let's see if it can help you remember.
Loosen the strap a little, he needs to breathe.
Dreamer released her purple mist. The guards' memories spilled out, leading them to the docks. Meanwhile, Eclipse was still working for his ex, oblivious. Polaris was livid. Back at the base, she confronted him.
So how's Carmen doing?
Okay, babe, you don't understand.
I saw you with her. I think I understand perfectly.
No, you don't. When you were in jail, the only way I could get to you was to go to Carmen for information, but I had to agree to work for her.
And you weren't going to mention this to me?
Polaris refused to forgive. If not for the child she carried, Eclipse would already be pinned to the wall with steel. At the same time, Reed combed through the stolen hard drive. He uncovered a disturbing pattern. The government was carefully selecting mutants, each with powers meant to counter specific threats. It was clear they were handpicking subjects for experimentation. Meanwhile, Turner continued his hunt for mutants while secretly meeting with Campbell, a so-called mutant researcher. Campbell was a vile man. He had secretly built an army of mutants and planned to plant spies inside Polaris's group. Turner hesitated. What if the infiltrator turned on them? Calm as ever, Campbell showed him a video. Mutants subjected to his re-education process became utterly obedient. The stolen hard drive contained all the details. Gus had been among the first to be brainwashed. Even more shocking, Reed discovered the program wasn't government-run at all. It was spearheaded by a private defense company, Trask Industries, where his father had worked for over 30 years. Strangely, Trask had supposedly gone bankrupt years ago. Even Reed didn't know if his father had been part of the experiments. Elsewhere, at a church shelter, a dazed woman with incredible speed, possibly teleportation powers, kept slamming herself against steel bars, desperate to escape. An hour earlier, the underground received a call from a kind-hearted priest. He said a group of mutants had fled the FBI and were hiding with him. Thunderbird led a team to retrieve them. But one telepath warned him, that short-haired girl isn't what she seems. Thunderbird checked and saw a tattoo on her arm, the same mark as Gus. Exposed, she snapped. Moving at blinding speed, only by sheer numbers did they subdue her. Once the newcomers were secured, Reed brought Thunderbird to meet his father. Reed had never been close to him. To Reed, the man was someone who'd abandoned his family. Now running an antique shop, his father wasn't surprised by Reed's visit. When Reed brought up Trask's secret labs, he brushed it off.
My work at Trask was classified.
I'm your son.
Son or not, it's a crime to reveal classified intelligence.
His stubborn silence infuriated Reed. He suspected his father had experimented on him. After all, both his children turned out to be mutants. Only when hearing about his grandchildren's powers did the old man relent. He called Reed upstairs and asked what they could do. Reed explained his daughter could bend air into barriers, and his son could tear through anything. The old man paled, shaking his head.
God, no.
Dad, what is it?
I failed. It came back.
He pulled out 2 old photographs.
This is my father, Andreas von Strucker. My father and his sister Andrea did unspeakable things. They were terrorists. They were also mutants.
Using their combined powers, they became infamous terrorists, and their abilities were identical to those Reed's children now possessed. They had once tried to mold Reed's father into a killer, but his good nature made him run away. Years later, he joined Trask, not to harm, but to find a cure for the mutant gene. Eventually, he succeeded, testing it on Reed himself. Reed had once been a mutant, but after the injection, he fell gravely ill and lost his powers. Guilt consumed his father, who cut all ties with the family. Now the truth was revealed. Reed understood, and the long-held knot in his heart began to unravel. But before father and son could reconcile, the FBI and Campbell stormed in. To protect Reed and Thunderbird, his father descended the stairs alone, to face them head-on. But the FBI pressed harder, demanding to search the entire house. Reed's father had endured enough. At last, he raised his hands, golden light blazing. Even Gus, the one who could suppress mutant powers, was helpless. Then Campbell played dirty. He fired a shot. The bullet struck Reed's father, his powers spiraling out of control. The entire first floor erupted in a massive explosion. The ground shook. Thunderbird realized something had gone terribly wrong. The FBI pulled back, retreating in chaos. Reed's father was dead. Even Gus, standing nearby, was killed in the blast. Meanwhile, Polaris fought to restrain the speedster girl. With Esme's help, they uncovered her tragic past. Campbell's men had kidnapped her daughter, murdered her husband, and experimented on her, eventually breaking her into a mindless hound. And at Trask, there were many more like her. Later, Polaris and Dreamer hunted for answers at a bar. Their target, a soldier bragging loudly about his job. While he rambled, Polaris flicked her fingers. The spoon in his hand bent instantly. Distracted, he never saw her punch coming. He collapsed. Dreamer exhaled her violet mist, diving into his memories. The man was Trask's head of security. Meeting him was nothing more than a setup to steal the facility's security layout. At the same time, Esme grew increasingly restless. Hearing the tormented screams of mutants inside Trask, she pleaded.
I could hear the screams. I could see the bodies. I could feel the agony when they turned that woman into that thing. And it's all happening in that building.
But without Trask's security maps, the team was powerless. That's why Polaris and Dreamer acted. Elsewhere, Lauren learned the truth. Her great-grandparents were none other than Fenris, infamous mutant terrorists. Together, their powers could level an entire building. Curious, Lauren and Andy decided to test their inherited bond. At first, holding hands did nothing. Andy urged, "We have to connect, really connect," and suddenly, raw energy flared. Thankfully, Reed intervened just in time. Otherwise, the underground's base would have been reduced to rubble. No wonder Fenris was once so feared. Soon after, Polaris secured the Trask schematics. The team planned their strike on the lab, but Esme secretly listened in, while Turner received the same intel. Because Esme herself was a hound. When the mission began, the mutants moved into position. Polaris, Thunderbird, and Esme handled the explosives. While grabbing a detonator, Esme deliberately fumbled it. Polaris barely caught it with her powers. Esme feigned fear, claiming it was her first mission and she was nervous. Polaris suspected something, but remembering Esme's family was still trapped at Trask, she pushed the doubt aside. Elsewhere, Lauren, Andy, Dreamer, and Blink infiltrated the facility to disable the cameras. At first, everything went smoothly. Guided by the head of security's memories, Dreamer avoided patrols with ease. Stubborn guards fell under her powers, obeying without question. But just as they reached the final camera, disaster struck. Turner arrived with a squad of FBI agents, sealing every exit. Blink suddenly lost her abilities. She couldn't open a portal. The group was forced to run. Blink, trailing behind, was tackled when Turner hurled a metal spider. With no choice, Dreamer dragged Lauren and Andy out. To protect them, she stayed behind, fighting off the agents until she was captured. The siblings reached the parking garage, only to find no escape. Lauren turned to Andy.
We can get out. We can get out if we do what we did before. Like Fenris.
The siblings clasped hands, golden light bursting in all directions, their hair whipping in the energy. Just as the building trembled on the brink of collapse, Andy suddenly let go.
What are you doing?
We can't.
We have to!
No, we're in the basement of the building. And if we do it, everyone's gonna die.
At that moment, Turner's squad stormed in, cornered. Lauren and Andy had no choice but to surrender. Outside, Polaris's team realized too late it was a trap. To avoid total capture, they pulled back. Lauren and Andy were locked in a separate cell by Campbell, who still bore scars from Reed's father burning half his face. Now, with Reed's grandchildren in his grasp, he intended to force them to combine their powers for his experiments. At first, they resisted.
We'll never give you what you want.
Well, I think you will. You just need additional motivation.
Campbell brought in Dreamer and Blink, pointing a loaded gun at them.
Doesn't have to be difficult. Just show me what you can do.
The siblings hesitated. If he fired for real, they couldn't stand by. Dreamer urged them. Don't give him what he wants. But it was too late.
Don't do what he...
To protect Blink, they complied. Energy surged between them, the sensors nearly exploding. Finally, a blinding beam blasted into the wall, almost leveling half the lab. Campbell smiled. At last, he had his perfect data. Meanwhile, the rest of the mutants were preparing a rescue. Eclipse and Esme scouted ahead, spotting Turner moving Dreamer and several captives. Eclipse tried to reassure her, it'll be okay. But in the next instant, Esme betrayed him. She shocked Eclipse unconscious, then turned her powers on the guards, disabling collars, freeing the mutants, and driving soldiers to kill themselves. Guns turned inward, grenades detonated. Within moments, the convoy was reduced to rubble, leaving only Turner alive. Two more women stepped down from a vehicle, Esme's identical sisters. Together, their combined powers made them unstoppable. Esme's infiltration of the underground had been nothing but a ploy to rescue them and accelerate her own plan. But after this bloody betrayal, the underground could no longer trust her. Reed hurriedly took his children away. Still, Campbell and Turner soon tracked them down. Armed with hounds and heavy artillery, they demolished the safe house. Andy was hit and knocked out cold. When Blink and Polaris got word, they opened a portal and rushed to help. They managed to pull the family out, but before they could escape far, the FBI caught up. The mutants fled into the forest, hunted at every turn. Groggy, Andy stirred, pointing ahead. Go, this way. The group ran and discovered the Esme sisters waiting. They had already wiped out the nearby guards and prepared 3 vehicles for escape. Once again, thanks to Esme, they slipped from Turner's grasp. After much debate, the underground agreed to launch Operation Hound Hunt, a coordinated strike against the federal government. Meanwhile, a sharp-suited man stood before a grand assembly. Behind his polished image lurked pure malice. Not content with experimenting on mutants, he now sought to rally ordinary humans into uniting against them, driving mutants to the brink. He gave the movement a lofty name, Humanity Today. The conference began quickly. Listen to the fiery speech of one delegate.
This bill will help fund next-generation programs to wipe out our enemies wherever they hide, whatever their powers, because we are done being afraid. We are done living under siege. It is time for humanity to prevail.
Thunderous applause erupted across the hall. Their intent was clear. Mutants were to be driven to extinction, even children wouldn't be spared. But mutants weren't helpless. They had a plan. Use the conference as a chance to capture Campbell, silencing him for good. Blink opened a portal, placing Eclipse and Thunderbird by the stairwell. When the meeting ended, Campbell strolled out of the elevator as if nothing had happened. Eclipse struck from behind, golden light blazing from his hand, nearly blinding Campbell. But within a heartbeat, Eclipse was subdued. To their shock, Campbell's bodyguards were mutants too. Thunderbird overpowered them, but Campbell snatched up a nearby child. He shouted, "Protect the children," while secretly pressing a gun to the little girl's chest. Eclipse saw through the ruse. To save the child, he let Campbell escape. The elevator doors closed just as another wave of guards opened fire. Eclipse dodged, but Blink was caught in the hallway. Thunderbird hurled himself in front of her, his body taking the bullets. The trio escaped through a portal. Furious, Esme snapped.
Where the hell is Campbell?
We couldn't get to him. He shielded himself with a bunch of kids.
So what? So kids. Do you know how many people are gonna die if the Helm program continues? We are not.
But there was no time to argue. Sirens blared, FBI units swarmed, the mutants had to retreat. On the road, patrol cars chased hard. Polaris made her move, climbing onto the roof, her hands glowed green. With a fierce swing, she yanked down a traffic light pole, sending it crashing across the street. Fierce, fearless, and stunning, who wouldn't fall for her? While Polaris's team fought the FBI, the underground base came under siege. At dawn, Turner surrounded it, sealing every exit. Once orders came down, they would level the hideout. Turner soon gave the order, wipe them out. Under Reed and Caitlin's direction, the mutants evacuated. Children slipped away in an invisible escort's car, while the fighters stayed behind. With exits blocked, Caitlin's only idea was to break through a wall. One mutant pounded at it, but nothing budged.
Shatter! Try again.
After freezing the wall, he struck again. This time cracks split open, and the group burst through to freedom. Then Turner unleashed his assault. Lauren and Andy chose to stay, covering their friends. They still had Fenris's ultimate power. Two mutants with arm cannons stormed in, followed by a screamer whose voice collapsed the ceiling. But Lauren and Andy stood firm, clasping hands. Golden light erupted around them.
Everybody out! Everybody out now! Fall back! Fall back!
But it was too late. A searing golden blast tore through the space, obliterating the building. Only Lauren and Andy remained standing. Meanwhile, Polaris's group escaped the FBI and spotted Campbell boarding a plane. Remembering all his atrocities, Polaris refused to let him leave. She stormed toward the runway. Eclipse drove after her, pleading, "Don't lose control. We can talk this through. Don't always go straight to killing. There are innocents on that plane." But Polaris wouldn't listen. She hurled steel barricades into place, blocking Eclipse. For her, only one thought remained. For the future of mutants, for the child she carried, she would rip that plane apart. As the aircraft lifted off, the green energy in her hands surged brighter than ever. The plane above suddenly lurched, the pilot's voice cracking over the intercom.
Prepare for emergency landing.
What the hell is going on?
Emergency landing. Don't do it, no!
A deafening explosion rocked the sky. Eclipse and the others froze in shock. When they looked up again, Polaris was gone. Not long after, the surviving mutants held a secret meeting. This time, Polaris arrived with Esme at her side. Her aura had changed. She was ready to join Esme's cause. Esme's faction also opposed harming mutants, but their methods were far more ruthless.
What are you doing?
I'm telling them the truth. The mutant underground is dying. That world, where we don't have to hide, that we've always talked about, I want to build that.
Her words struck a chord. Even Andy chose to leave his parents and follow her. Whether this path led to salvation or disaster, no one could know. This pregnant girl is no ordinary person. To help her rest safely, her teammates found a weapons warehouse made of stone and concrete. Just as they were about to go in, she suddenly went into labor. Moments later, boom, the baby in her belly felt like a little demon trying to punch its way out, leaving everyone staring in shock. Thankfully, the warehouse was solid. Otherwise, by the time the baby arrived, the whole place might have blown apart. Her name is Polaris. She inherited her father Magneto's gift in full. Anything made of metal becomes a weapon in her hands. 6 months earlier, Polaris led her crew away from the mutant underground and joined Reeva's inner circle, the Hellfire crowd. The group is stacked with heavy hitters, including the Frost Sisters, who can read minds. Following Reeva's orders, they're gearing up for a final showdown with humans to fight for mutant equality. But Reeva is ruthless. With a single sonic scream, anyone who thinks of betraying her ends up dead. Polaris and Andy know this all too well, so they've cut off contact with their families. They plan to wait until after Polaris gives birth to showcase their power, so humans can see what they're really capable of. That night, Polaris goes into labor. A specialist is called, and she's taken into a special delivery room. The contractions grow brutal. Polaris screams like she's about to bring the house down. Everyone is on edge, and the doctor doesn't dare lose focus. Her magnetic field flares so intensely that it disrupts everything around her. The electrical system is on the verge of collapsing. Then the baby suddenly shifts position, refusing to come out no matter what they try. The doctor tells Reeva Polaris may be trapped by a psychological block. If they don't remove it, she could die in childbirth. Reeva immediately sends the Frost sisters to project images into Polaris's mind.
We did it, baby. We really did it.
Polaris snaps back to herself, thinking she still has big things to do. She grits her teeth and pushes. Sparks and arcs of electricity explode around her. A utility pole outside splits in half, and the entire city goes dark. The baby is born safely. Polaris cradles her child, overwhelmed with joy. Meanwhile, the baby's father, Marcos, senses something's wrong. His wife just blacked out an entire city. He jumps in his car to find her, but with their earlier conflict unresolved, Polaris has no intention of letting him track her down. At the same time, Reeva makes her move. The warehouse is a rental, and the media has already reported on what happened outside. Simply relocating won't cut it. Reeva orders the Frost sisters to blow up the warehouse and kill the manager to tie up loose ends. The man has already promised to keep quiet, but Reeva wants him gone. The three sisters, short skirts, red high heels, quickly find the unlucky manager. They eliminate him in an instant. After hearing this, Polaris warns Andy to obey Reeva and train hard, otherwise, he'll end up a disposable pawn. Andy agrees, but things go sideways during practice. Seeing he can't focus, Reeva grows furious, especially after learning he secretly contacted his family. Patience gone, she slowly opens her mouth, ready to unleash her sonic scream. Andy jumps up and pours out how much he misses home, barely winning back Reeva's trust. Cut to a man driving. Veins bulge along his forearms, the air around him heats up. The steering wheel gets so hot it starts to melt, nearly causing a crash. Luckily, the car in front is empty. After the collision, his vehicle grinds to a halt. Reed's forehead is split and bleeding. His daughter asks what happened, but Reed has no idea how to explain. Ever since Andy left, his innate powers have been growing stronger, now beyond his control and liable to flare at any moment. Afraid of being seen by the police, father and daughter quickly switch to another car. Back at their hideout, Reed wanted to tell everyone what had happened, but Marcos was taken by Reeva's people. Their baby had jaundice, and normal light therapy wasn't helping. Since Marcos could manipulate light, he was forced to come. The moment he saw his child, Marcos's heart melted. He gently raised his hand, casting healing light over the baby. The symptoms vanished instantly. The doctor asked him to return the baby, but having to part so soon after holding his child broke his heart. As the saying goes, when a woman has made up her mind, nothing can pull her back. Just as Marcos tried to say more, the Frost sisters arrived to escort him out. They attempted to seize control of his mind and force him out under a hood, but Marcos resisted stubbornly. He fought against their psychic grip, forcing Reeva to intervene herself. The moment her blackened lips parted, Marcos could no longer withstand her power. Back at the safe house, he told the others everything and swore he would get his wife and child back. To uncover Reeva's true motives, they sought out a mutant hacker, who also happened to be a junkie. Just a whiff of drugs would send him into a trance, teetering between life and death. The hacker placed his hands on the keyboard, eyes rolling back, and pulled up extensive data on Reeva. Recently, she had set her sights on a hospital where many mutants were imprisoned. Could it be that Reeva planned to free them? Uncertain, the group split up. Marcos's team went to scout the hospital while Reed and Caitlin stayed behind to keep an eye on the hacker. But his abilities were limited. He couldn't hack into the surveillance system. Caitlin held out a vial of drugs, saying, "If you help me find my son, this is yours." Instantly motivated, the hacker's eyes rolled back again, and he broke through. They spotted Polaris on the cameras, seemingly preparing to take someone away. Thunderbird and Blink entered the hospital through a portal, while Marcos and Lauren provided backup outside. Following the hacker's directions, Blink's group soon ran into Polaris. Once friends, they now stood on opposite sides. Polaris unleashed her power, throwing open every cell door. Mutants surged out, chaos consuming the facility. Thunderbird and Blink were cut off and called Marcos to intercept Polaris outside. Marcos prepared to use his powers to stop the vehicle, but Lauren, afraid her brother might get hurt inside, insisted on handling it herself. "He won't hurt me," she assured them. But when the car stopped, Lauren realized she was wrong. Andy stepped out, thrust his hands forward, and blasted both Marcos and Lauren into the air, nearly cracking their skulls. When they returned, Lauren broke down in tears before her parents. Learning that Andy truly had no intention of coming home shattered Caitlin. She couldn't accept it. Soon after, the media broadcast the hospital incident everywhere. Under the Frost sisters' control, the hospital staff recorded a video confession. "We were wrong. We deserve this, we support the mutant uprising. Watching the reports, Polaris felt proud and triumphant, yet one question lingered: why had Reeva brought back a young girl from the hospital? The girl, the youngest among them, could move objects with a flick of her fingers, even alter writing on glass in an instant. Her abilities astonished Andy. As a police car passed, she smiled and asked if he wanted to have some fun. Moments later, the patrol car was wrecked. Terrified, the officer called for backup. She egged Andy on, pushing him to unleash his powers. Andy clenched his fists, grit his teeth, and ripped the car doors clean off. The fuel tank exploded, smoke filling the sky. The girl beamed with delight, the perfect image of a rebellious teenager. But she hadn't always been this way. Her name was Rebecca. Once imprisoned in the mutant hospital, she had endured countless inhumane experiments. Recently freed by Reeva, she had joined the inner circle. Her powers sharpened quickly, and with her defiant, magnetic energy, she had clearly captured Andy's heart. Polaris was a little unsettled because she didn't know what came next. Reeva would sometimes disappear for days and leave them intense training tasks, leaving Polaris so busy she had no time to care for her baby. That day Reeva assigned a mission: fight live-action targets armed with guns. Andy used his power to throw them away. Polaris controlled incoming bullets, and Rebecca finished the job with her ability. Reeva applauded, but Polaris immediately showed her displeasure. She was genuinely annoyed. "Let me be clear. Tell me what this action is for. If not, I won't do it." Reeva couldn't reason with Polaris directly, so she ordered the Frost Sisters to calm her. Polaris was the team's core. Without her, they'd be shredded. The Frost Sisters met with Polaris. The baby kept crying, so they temporarily dampened the child's consciousness to make her sleep. Polaris, thinking her baby had dozed off, spent time talking with them. Then the eldest Frost sister took Polaris near a bank and explained that the bank was built to keep mutants out. The security system triggers an alarm when a mutant approaches. Such blatant oppression enraged anyone who heard it. The eldest said they had to destroy the bank and, in doing so, expose their cause so more mutants would join and rise up with them. Polaris was quickly inspired. Back at base, she heard the eldest Frost sister humming a lullaby. "This is the lullaby I sang to my child. Oh, maybe I overheard it somewhere. It's all I have left from my mother. I only sang it to Dawn when we were alone." The eldest Frost sister was reluctant to admit the truth, which provoked Polaris to attack. Reeva, waiting by the elevator, rushed out and shouted. The elevator opened and saved the eldest Frost sister. Still, Polaris felt betrayed. She believed they kept secrets and weren't truly united. That night the eldest came back and decided to be frank. It turned out there had once been 5 sisters. The government had captured and forced them into brutal training. 3 would be sent out while 2 were held hostage. If the 3 couldn't act, the other 2 were threatened with death, so they had no choice but to comply. After they managed to remove their collars, they overpowered their captors, set them against each other, and escaped. The Frost Sisters joined Reeva because they believed that only a successful uprising would free other mutants from suffering. The eldest also promised Polaris she would never harm Polaris's daughter and would protect and love the child. Polaris was moved to tears, forgave them, and refocused on training. She needed to build a better future for her child. On the day of the operation, a group in black leather showed up at the bank, more like a fashion show than a heist. The Frost Sisters struck first. Their eyes glowed blue and the guards outside obediently dropped their guns and opened the doors. Polaris stepped in, raised her hand, and knocked out all the bank's computers. If things got desperate, people might open fire, but they were facing Magneto's daughter. Polaris raised both hands and blocked the bullets. They fell like rain. Add Reeva's sonic scream to that, and everyone nearby nearly ruptured their eardrums. After securing the weapons, everyone was locked in an office. Only those who complied would be allowed to leave. The bank manager, arrogant, sneered that the bank was built to stop mutants. If they tried to rob it, they'd die. No sooner had he spoken than the Frost Sisters approached, their blue eyes fixed on him, and he was forced to film a self-criticism. The government was terrible, treating mutants as disposable, and if the bank was robbed, some thought it deserved it. After the video, Polaris led Andy and Rebecca to the vault. Rebecca fiddled with the lock but still couldn't open it. With no other choice, Andy forced Rebecca to relive her painful memories, being locked up, tortured. Those moments flooded back in an instant. A second later, Polaris called for Reeva, who arrived with a high-ranking bank manager, her former lover. Once a woman hardens her heart, even an ex-lover is just a tool. With a flick of his fingers, the man transferred all his assets to Reeva. Because they had once shared a bed, Reeva promised not to kill him or the employees trapped inside the office. But Rebecca wasn't one to obey. She kept goading Reeva. When Reeva gave no reaction, Rebecca snapped. Standing at the door, she unleashed her power.
No.
In seconds, everyone inside was dead. Rebecca smiled with satisfaction. Clearly, she wasn't just cruel, she was terrifying. Whoever loved her would fear her wrath. Angering her meant being crushed to pulp in seconds. Polaris had always opposed killing innocents, but arguing with Rebecca was pointless. The girl never backed down, even against adults, and finally stormed off the vehicle. The bank heist caused a massive uproar. Many mutants rose in rebellion, while humans burned schools and churches in retaliation. Chaos reigned in the streets. Polaris worried most about her daughter, afraid the baby would be harmed, so she met Marcos, who held the child like she was fragile glass. For the baby's safety, Marcos agreed to let Polaris take her away, sending her to live with an aunt in the countryside. Meanwhile, Thunderbird and Blink tracked signs near the bank. Thunderbird placed his hand on the ground and instantly sensed what had happened. Following the trail, they found Rebecca. She showed no guilt for the massacre. Her attitude was defiant. "Yeah, I killed them all, so what?" Thunderbird urged her to reveal Reeva's plans, but she insisted she knew nothing. The bank heist was Reeva's idea. She only mentioned that the vault contained important files tied to Regimen, then she bolted. After some investigation, Thunderbird discovered Regimen was a tech company based in the city. If they wanted to know Reeva's next move, they'd have to start there. Flashback: Rebecca once sat at the table eating. She squeezed her dessert so tightly it crumbled to bits, and her parents watched her with wary eyes. When she tried to flee, police surrounded the house. Before she could use her powers, she was restrained. The ones who betrayed her were her own parents. Seeing the collar locked on their daughter, they felt relieved, but they didn't realize she would be thrown into a hospital and tortured daily. When Reeva eventually freed her, Rebecca's hatred for humans only deepened. On her first mission, she killed recklessly and fled. Reeva, who despised being undermined, quickly recaptured her and locked her up again. At the same time, Thunderbird's group captured a systems analyst. The old man refused to talk until Thunderbird smashed a cabinet in fury. Terrified, he confessed. All the mutant control collars in prison came from Regimen. Reeva clearly planned to start there, removing collars so mutants could regain their powers. Thunderbird and Marcos resolved to stop her, forcing the analyst to reveal prison locations. As for Andy, he couldn't stand to see Rebecca suffer. After pleading with Reeva in vain, he went to the chamber himself. Once freed, Rebecca threw herself into his arms, and they kissed passionately. Andy wanted to run away with her, but Rebecca had other plans. She pressed the elevator button to Reeva's floor. Sensing danger, Andy rushed to stop her. But his power was overwhelming. With a single push, he sent Rebecca flying into a pillar, killing her instantly, accidentally killing the girl he loved. Andy was consumed with grief. Yet, ironically, the tragedy only made Reeva trust him more. After learning the analyst had been captured, Reeva sent one of her most trusted operatives to silence him. The man, a master of invisibility, swiftly finished the job. Next, Reeva's group moved into Regimen's operations sector and successfully disabled its security system. With the Frost sisters' psychic control, they strolled right in. Polaris wore a hair clip that day, a gift from her father, reminding herself that she was Magneto's daughter. As they exited the car, Andy took the lead, clenching his fist. The bulletproof doors collapsed into rubble. Polaris followed him inside, raising her hands, floating upward. A green glow surged, wires sparked, and mutant control collars across the facility lost power. In one prison, a mutant ripped off his collar and, with a snap of his fingers, guards burst into flames. Soon, countless imprisoned mutants were free, and the city spiraled into chaos. Meanwhile, Turner resurfaced after disappearing for so long. The previous explosion had killed many, and though Turner survived, he was expelled from the FBI. Still, he didn't give up. He joined the Purifiers to continue hunting mutants. Thunderbird was captured. With his ability limited to tracking, he was quickly overpowered. Turner slammed him against a wall and dragged him in. Marcos's group gathered to plan. Outnumbered, they couldn't take on Turner. With no other choice, they reached out to Polaris. Hearing that her old friend had been taken, Polaris rushed to see Marcos. Turner interrogated Thunderbird, chaining him head to toe in iron. Yet Thunderbird refused to reveal the mutant's hideout. When another man struck him, Thunderbird tilted his head, defiant. No matter what, he wouldn't talk. Turner escalated. Knowing Thunderbird's enhanced hearing, he strapped on headphones blasting heavy club music. Thunderbird's eardrums felt ready to explode, but he endured, waiting for his team. At the fence, a woman raised her hands, emerald energy ripping the metal apart. Her partner followed with an explosion that sent enemies scattering. Their only goal, free Thunderbird. Husband and wife fought side by side in perfect sync, a scene worthy of history. Hearing the attack, Turner drew his gun and fired at Thunderbird. At that moment, Lauren and Blink stormed in. Andy flicked his hand, slamming a gunman into the wall. 2 more rushed forward, but Lauren conjured an air shield and, combined with Andy's power, sent them flying. As the chaos mounted, Turner's men urged him to retreat, but he snarled at Thunderbird. "I'll tell you this. I'm going to kill every one of your friends. They're all going to die." He tried to fire again, but the gun clicked empty. With mutants closing in, Turner was pulled away by his allies. Thunderbird was finally freed. As they left, a stray soldier fired at them. The bullet nearly struck Lauren. Andy lost it. Seeing his sister almost hurt, Andy snapped, ready to kill the soldier. Only Lauren's desperate intervention pulled him back to his senses. After escaping, Andy's parents tried to reason with him, but he dismissed them, claiming he was grown now. Communication between them broke down completely. Meanwhile, Polaris and Marcos shared a parting kiss. Before leaving, she told him bluntly, "I won't change my mind just because I love you." Fierce and stunning, she left Marcos unable to let go. Polaris returned to Reeva's side. To prepare for the next stage, Reeva brought in a new squad of mutants, each with their own deadly skills. But before anything else, Reeva asserted dominance. One scream nearly wiped them out. Her leadership was unquestionable. She ordered everyone to train harder. Watching it all, Polaris felt uneasy. These were ruthless killers, willing to commit any atrocity. Fighting beside them was disgraceful. She secretly hoped Reeva would cast them out. Reeva insisted that the organization needed the newcomers. On the battlefield, they'd be the best weapons. Polaris reluctantly let it slide, but inside, doubts about Reeva began to grow. Polaris had always wanted justice for mutants, but now the inner circle was killing indiscriminately. She couldn't accept Reeva's ruthless methods, but alone, she couldn't stop her. With no other choice, she reached out to Marcos, sharing everything on her mind. Spouses couldn't stay angry forever. Marcos agreed to help. With Blink as a bridge, they met Erg, the leader of a mutant faction living underground. Erg and his people were quick to gather intel but avoided outside conflicts. Still, out of solidarity, he shared a lead. Reeva had disabled all surveillance cameras along a road, likely preparing something there. Marcos decided to check it out. Polaris tried to get information from the new recruits, but they were too secretive. She went with Marcos instead. After waiting a long while, 2 cars finally arrived. Reeva stepped out holding a file, meeting with a National Ministry of Information and Communications official. This man was clearly one of the instigators of the war on mutants. Why would he meet Reeva? Polaris was baffled. Watching them, she noticed the meeting was tense. They exchanged files, then left separately. Meanwhile, the new recruits demonstrated their power. One swung a bat, charging it until it glowed red. A woman hurled it into the air, and the heavy-set man behind her clapped, detonating the bat mid-flight, turning the target to ash. After relentless training, their powers had grown so strong they even overshadowed Magneto's daughter. Fearing Reeva would use them for senseless killing, Polaris pretended to be friendly and tried to ask about upcoming plans, but the trio was too cautious, barely giving her a word. She'd have to find another way. Elsewhere, Lauren and Andy began sharing the same dreams. Their minds were linked, but their beliefs clashed. Lauren longed for peace. Andy wanted mutants to seize power. In the dream, they fought each other. Andy told the Frost sisters. Seeing his injuries in the dream, they suggested, "Maybe you should invite her in. Your mind and Lauren's are connected. We can use you to reach her consciousness." The sisters truly had this ability, but Andy didn't want to force his sister's mind. Meanwhile, Marcos rallied several mutant groups to fight for justice. Encouraged, Erg finally agreed to join, but his forces alone weren't enough. Caitlin went to her brother Danny, urging him to warn the Defense Department of an impending terrorist attack. At the same time, the Frost sisters assigned missions to the new recruits. "Once it's done, report to Reeva immediately." "Understood. No mistakes, clean and fast." Hearing this, Polaris rushed back to her room and called Marcos. She had overheard the name Evangeline, a mutant who could breathe smoke and turn her hands into claws, now an ally of Marcos. Clearly, the new recruits had been sent to eliminate her. Marcos's team hurried to Evangeline's base but arrived too late. Seeing her grim fate, Erg considered backing out. Thunderbird, frustrated, lost his temper and punched Erg in the stomach. Outraged, Erg blasted him with energy from his eyes, sending him flying. Meanwhile, Caitlin and Lauren ran into trouble. To save himself, Danny betrayed them, revealing that Reeva had spies inside the Defense Department, forcing his hand. Soon after, police cars surrounded them. Lauren told her mother to get in the car, then glared furiously at the one ahead. With her air shield blocking bullets, mother and daughter escaped. On the road, Lauren confessed that while fighting the police, she felt strange, like she couldn't control her own thoughts. Caitlin kept comforting her, trying to calm her down. Unbeknownst to them, Andy had already agreed to the Frost sisters' plan. They tried to use the psychic link to pull Lauren into their ranks. But Lauren wasn't easy to control, forcing them to chip away at her mind little by little. Meanwhile, the new recruits continued training. Polaris joined them, but the more she saw their growing strength, the more uneasy she felt. She deliberately injured her arm, using it as an excuse to sneak into Reeva's office. What she found left her shaken. On Reeva's desk lay maps of the White House, the Pentagon, Sentinel Services headquarters, and the Capitol. Clearly, Reeva was planning a final strike. Polaris immediately alerted Marcos, but before they could figure out a strategy, something unexpected happened. Though sleeping in different places, Andy and Lauren met again in the same dream. The Frost sisters appeared with glowing eyes, standing at Andy's bedside, coaching him on how to persuade his sister. They played the family bond card. Lauren held Andy's hand, but within seconds regretted it. Ignoring his calls, she pulled away and jolted awake in the real world. Lauren and Andy were two of the most powerful mutants, each with unique abilities. Together, their combined power could be unstoppable, but now they stood on opposite sides. Andy had joined the inner circle, intent on destroying the White House and Pentagon to shift the balance of power, while Lauren stayed with her original team, determined to protect mutants the right way. Andy had hoped the Frost sisters could sway Lauren, but when they failed, the rift between brother and sister only grew. Lauren even disappeared for a while. At a bus station, she saw a mutant father being arrested without question. Despite having a family. Outraged, she intervened.
Disarm a living what mutants are.
Reed and Thunderbird tracked her down. By the time they arrived, the police car was wrecked. They kept after her until they caught up. Lauren looked frail but insisted on finding Andy. Reed stopped her, and after heartfelt pleading, she finally gave up the idea. Meanwhile, Max, one of the new recruits, approached Polaris. Keenly observant, he had noticed her unusual interest in their missions. Polaris quickly flipped the script, turning the suspicion back on him. Intimidated, Max stormed off, and Polaris breathed a sigh of relief. Her acting had saved her. Later that night, Max went to a supermarket for alcohol. With the timing Polaris provided, Marcos slipped into his car. As Max got in, a blinding light hit the back of his head. "What's going on? Don't move, or you'll be roasted. What do you want? Just a little drive. Easy now. All right. Stay calm, I'm just putting on my seatbelt." Slowly. But Max faked fastening his belt and shot Marcos in the stomach. The two fought fiercely before the car exploded. Marcos stumbled out, clutching his wound. Too trusting, he had failed to be cautious, losing both intel and blood. Soon, Reeva noticed someone was missing. She didn't care if Max lived or died. She only wanted to know who had leaked his location. Suspicion spread through the ranks, but Polaris remained calm enough to divert attention from herself. Elsewhere, Turner received a lead. The Minister of Information and Communications told him a group of mutants was hiding in tunnels. With a raid, they could capture or kill many. Turner knew such an act would only enrage more mutants, but the minister was firm. Mutants aren't good or bad, kill them all. He promised Turner that once order was restored, his FBI badge would be reinstated. Human nature is selfish. Turner agreed, unaware that the minister had long been in Reeva's pocket. She had promised him the highest seat of human leadership, and he, blinded by ambition, was ready to help her wipe out Marcos and his allies. Reeva tightened security. Until Max was found, no one was allowed outside, and even phones had no signal. Polaris couldn't contact Marcos, so she vented her frustration in silence. Meanwhile, Turner assembled an armed task force, ready to wipe out the mutants living underground. Their leader, ordered his people to create illusionary walls to buy time for evacuation. Turner stormed in. Mutants conjured illusions and eerie sounds. 2 of his men died, the rest hesitated. Turner, relentless, rigged the bodies with explosives.
Search the bodies, any IDs or walkies, any intelligence, we get it to Erg right away.
Caught off guard, the mutants fell into the trap and died needlessly. Blink opened portals to move survivors above ground. Gunfire rained as Turner advanced. Erg absorbed every blast, converting it into energy. Knowing his ability, Turner's men switched targets, mowing down others. Blink hurried Erg to escape, but just as she tried to flee, disaster struck. Elsewhere, Lauren and Caitlin led evacuees but were cornered by police. Caitlin floored the gas, breaking through. Afterward, Reed and Marcos went searching for Thunderbird. Thunderbird refused to leave without Blink. Surrounded by cops, they risked capture. Reed scouted ahead and was spotted. His glowing arm gave him away. The officer raised his gun, but Reed reflexively grabbed it, disintegrating the weapon to dust. The Struckers all had power, except Andy, who had strayed. Andy, with the Frost sisters, was on his way to attack a government building. Along the road, Polaris tried to hint at the consequences, but Andy was brainwashed, bent on tearing it down to usher in a new mutant era. The day before the assault, Reeva led them through tunnels under the government building. When the operation neared, Polaris secretly met Andy. She told him Reeva was colluding with the Ministry of Information, that all this talk of mutant freedom was really for her selfish ambition. Andy didn't believe her and refused to go with her. Reed then called directly. Father and son spoke openly. Andy wavered, then returned with Polaris to his family. Reeva noticed, but it didn't matter. She believed Polaris's group couldn't stop her anyway. She called the minister, ordering him to deploy troops against them. While others fetched supplies, the Frost sisters seized Lauren and Andy's minds, forcing the siblings to serve the inner circle. To rescue them, Thunderbird held off Turner, with Erg's help smashing his head open in the fight. Lauren and Andy were forced to hold hands at the government building. Lauren tried to resist, but when the Frost sisters' eyes glowed, she couldn't fight back. A golden light engulfed the building. At the last second, Polaris's team arrived. Marcos cut the Frost sisters' control, freeing the siblings, though both were left drained. Determined to stop Reeva, they targeted her lair. Polaris guided them to the garage, but Reeva's forces were waiting. The heavy man clapped. Explosions tore the team apart. Reed's power surged uncontrollably. Alone, he confronted Reeva. Her sonic scream shredded his mind. His arms glowed red hot, melting everything he touched. When she thought he was finished, Reed spoke. You want the Von Strucker's power? Take it all. Reed unleashed everything. He was the true trump card, but he didn't survive. Reeva perished, yet the mutant uprising wasn't over. Polaris's team still had more battles ahead. Just then, Blink, long missing, appeared.
Something's happened. I need you all to come with me.
And that's the full story of The Gifted Seasons 1 and 2. So, what did you think of the show? On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate it? Drop your answers in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.